Hi everybody, I'm Susan. I also have with me today David Morse, my colleague here at Aber, and we also have Rebecca and Ellen, two of our amazing student ambassadors. Before we even get started, we're going to do a very brief, and I do mean a very brief overview of the UCAS portal, which, for those who don't already know, it's the system that you use to apply to university, and your personal statement is part of that application. So, this is what the UCAS webpage looks like. All you need to do is put into your browser www.ucas.com. Rob is going to be linking these links into the chat panel for me as we go ahead, which you can refer to as and when. Anyway, you will see at the top right of the UCAS website, there is a sign-in button. Okay, when you hover over that, the panel students comes up. Okay, so you need to hover on that, you need to click that, and then we're taken over to this page. So it will give you the option for your year of entry, and you have either 2020, 2021. I do understand we've got a couple of year 11s in there, so it's all a bit soon for you. Don't panic though. Whatever you choose, the application format will be exactly the same, but obviously make sure you're selecting the right one for you. Before you can apply at all, you need to register with UCAS. This is completely free. It will take approximately 15 minutes and you'll only need to do this once. I'm sorry to sound completely obvious here, but registration, it's the process of entering your personal details. So that's your name, your date of birth, your address, all that sort of thing. If you're applying through a school or college or career centre or any other organisation, you'll be asked to use a buzzword that's provided by them. So please have this information to hand before you get started, okay? The purpose of the buzzword is that it will allow your institution to access and see the progress of your application and allows your referee to attach your reference. But once you've completed the registration process, a username will automatically be generated and you'll be asked to create a password of your choosing. Once you've done that, you'll get a 10-digit personal ID code. It goes without saying that you need to make a note of all of these details, guys, so that you can go back to your application later. You don't need to complete the application all in one go, and in fact I would seriously advise against this for reasons that are going to be coming clear later. So then, this is what the UCAS portal looks like. As you can see, there are 8 sections to complete. You do need to pay for this service, okay, so you can see the pay and send option there. It's currently £20 if you're applying to just one course, or £25 for multiple courses and for late applications. The payment option won't become live, so to speak, until all areas of your application have been signed off as complete, but it's this bit that you can see on the screen that you are here for today. So a personal statement, it's the crowning glory of your UCAS application. Up until you complete this section of the application, you are just a statistic. So all those bits on that left side of the screen that you can see there, it's just your generic data. So a personal statement, that's the thing that you really need to put the effort into here, because at the end of the day, that is what's going to make you stand out from the crowd. For some people, a personal statement, it can cause a lot of fear and anxiety. It's a task that requires a lot of time, thought and creativity. But that's why you're here today, so to try and put you at your ease and to kind of basically show you that there's nothing to worry too much about. It can be quite fun to do. Okay, I'd actually be interested to hear why you guys think personal statements are important. Can I have maybe some shout outs or some interaction in the chats? I can't see the chat panel now that I'm in my presentation, but Rob, if there is any coming out, can we maybe read them out? And then anybody who is happy to be on a mic, do shout out, please don't be shy. What do we think? Why do we think personal statements are important?
I'd say it's a more like personal insight into why you want to reply. So instead of just all the data that you're putting in, it's something that you decide yourself, and you can not boast about yourself, but put more personal details into it.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Good. Anybody else?
Because you're writing from your perspective, it gives the university an insight into what you're like as a person.
Brilliant. Anyone else?
Got a couple from the chat. So Ella is saying, telling the university who you are. Mary, to help universities understand you as a person and how you are unique. And Erin is saying it's a chance for you to articulate why you'd like to study a particular subject or course, and what skills and experience you possess that show your passion for your chosen field. And then one more from Ella, how your experiences will make you good for the course you're applying for.
You don't need me today, do you? Go on, go and do it yourself. You don't need me. Right, okay then, so just to round up then, personal statements, they're a chance to promote yourself. They're a chance to demonstrate your personality, your academic intelligence, and most importantly, who you are and why you want to study the subject you've chosen at a higher level. You are making the decision to take on a subject for a further 3, 4, or even 5 years. So this implies you are passionate about your subject. Admission tutors, they're looking for students who are as enthusiastic about their subject as they are. So they're going to be looking to give a place to students who they feel are able to enjoy and complete the course. There really is a reason you need to write the personal statement. It's not just a tick on the UCAS application. The admission tutors, they honestly, they do read them. It's vital in closely run applications, because let's say a university's physics intake is for only 10 places. You need to make sure then that your personal statement really sells you to that department, so you've got a better chance of being one of those 10 chosen candidates. Be aware that some universities and courses, they do require an interview, so your personal statement will be used very heavily during the interview process. So as I say, we read them. Admission tutors read them. It's not just something you can just run off in 5 minutes and think, done, that's it. That's it. No, the personal statement is important. We need you to get it right, or as right as you possibly can. This one sounds rather obvious, and it just seems silly to say it, but universities, they want to know that you are genuinely interested in the course. Saying that you'd like to be a surgeon because it pays well is not gonna make the best impression, really, is it? And if we see an application like that, why would we give you a place on a very competitive course? We want people who are genuinely interested, that want to study the subject for the right reasons, and that's to develop your intellect, your passion for the subject, to have a career that is going to be fulfilling for the rest of your life, if that's what you choose to stick with. At the end of the day, the personal statement is more often than not the reason, well, it's the difference between universities saying yes or no. So you've got to put all of your heart and soul into it. Right, before we get started properly, here's a few things to think about. We want you to make sure to take your time and be ready to make changes. As I said earlier, this won't be a process that you can knock off in the next 5 minutes. It's not going to be something you can complete in the space of the day. It's going to take a couple of weeks, because you're going to be running through it again and again just to make sure it's right. We'd advise then looking at the structure and profile of the courses that you're looking for, and try to see how you suit that profile and provide any evidence. Look at universities, the university websites, to see if they provide guidance about personal statements. There's plenty of inspiration online if you only look for it. And another good place to look is on the UCAS website itself. They've got an amazing search function, so please do utilise it as much as possible. You need to be aiming to write about 2/3 of your personal statement about your academic achievements and 1/3 about your life outside your academic studies. We will get to this. And this is a big bugbear, and this is a big panic for a lot of people, but you've only got a maximum of 4,000 characters to use in your personal statement. That's 47 lines, which comes to approximately 650 words, give or take. That is not a massive amount of words to play with, so you need to make sure every word counts. I'd advise to maybe use Microsoft Word or an equivalent tool to help you track your character and word count. You can see in the UCAS website that you can actually kind of just type it there in the actual section provided, but so use another program to write it first, and then you can copy and paste it in. Okay. As a general rule then, personal statement should be made up of 5 key parts. This makes it much easier for you to structure your writing and admission tutors to follow it. And these key parts are made up as follows. So you've got your introduction, where we want you to explain what motivates you. We want your academic evidence of skills and interests, evidence of your interest in the subject and outside motivation, your further skills in order to show that you're a rounded person, to do the air quotes, but yeah, rounded person, and your conclusion, which is remind them why they should choose you. However, I must stress this isn't the golden rule. You might find some information overlaps, and in some instances you have, what you have to say, it doesn't fit into that strict structure. But at the very least, I encourage you to use this structure in the first instance to help you write that first draft, and then you can figure out what needs to go where. This is just a really helpful springboard to help guide you. Okay, introduction. Can we get your paper and pens ready, please? I just want you to do a little bit of a brainstorm. I'm not going to ask you to share any of this. It's just to help you get your head around it, okay? But I want you... Have we got them? Can I have a bit of a shout out just to see if we do before I start going on? This doesn't bode well if I've got silence. I'm going to assume you have them, so we're going to carry on. Right. Why have you chosen this subject at university? Why do you love it? What's inspired you to take this further than you already have? Okay, try and make notes about this. Try and think about it. I want you to grab our attention, if at all possible. We love something different. Admission tutors, they want to see something unique in a personal statement. Please avoid using phrases like from a very early age, or I have always wanted to be a doctor, because they're just complete cliches. They're completely overdone. There's usually a very good reason why you want to do your chosen subject, and it's extremely unlikely you made the decision when you were 4 years old. It just didn't happen. Try to think of that personal eureka moment. There's so many factors to take into consideration here. Each are unique, to your own experience. Okay, so did you see a story on the news that struck home? Did you meet somebody who inspired you? Did you read an amazing book that got you thinking? Watch a film or TV program that sparked your interest? Or there may be a personal reason you want to study a certain course. There could be delicate circumstances that are a factor. Or quite simply, you may wish to follow a family member's footsteps. There's loads of different reasons, but there is usually always some sort of eureka moment that made you think, that's what I want to do. This is what I'm going to choose. This isn't for everybody, I will admit. There are some, odd circumstances where that isn't the case, but I'd say 90% of the time you have a eureka moment, and it's there. You just got to think about it. How does your interest fit in with the global picture, current issue? It's not always going to be relevant. It won't apply to all subjects, but something such as international politics, for instance, climate change, medicine, these sort of subjects, they lend themselves perfectly to this kind of thing. So think about that. And here's something else. Is there anything in particular that excites you about the subject that you want to study? French films, black holes, Gothic literature, contemporary Spanish art, it's all there. This is one of the really big things, one of my big bugbears. Try to only use quotes if absolutely necessary. I promise you, the last thing an admission tutor wants to see is Martin Luther King once said, "I have a dream." They're funny things, quotes, and if they don't serve as being a direct inspiration to you, then it's probably best to leave them out completely. You're wasting your word count. Honestly, if you've read a quote that made you think, "Ooh, yeah, that's really struck home for me," we'll have a think about it. But seriously, just try not to use quotes, because it just looks like, fluff, to be perfectly honest. It looks as if you're just filling in the gaps to try to look clever, and it's just not needed, guys. So try to avoid them if you can. Okay, I'm going to share a link with you now, or rather Rob is, and I just want you to tell me in a couple of lines why you want to study your chosen subject at uni. I just think it would be interesting to see what you lot come up with. So if Rob, could you share that link for me? And I'm going to try and switch screens now, see if this is going to work. Okay. That's Aberystwyth in the background, guys, by the way, just so you know. Right, where are we? Okay, so, these are they're good answers. I am pretty positive we can expand on these a lot more. Every single time I ask this question when I'm in a classroom, I often get, I just enjoy it, or not all of the answers are vague, but I will always ask why. And I'll keep asking why to that same person until they've given me something that really kind of pinpoints, that comes down to the meat of the answer. Now, you're not going to get this right first off. This is why we're here today. I want you to kind of brainstorm. I want you to think about these things. Because this is, like I said, the introduction is very, very important. We want to know what it is that's relevant, directly relevant to you. What is that eureka moment? What is the thing that's made you go, yes, this is for me. This is what I want, you know, if you want to spend the next 3, 4, 5 years studying at university and then going off to do a career in. Okay, right then. We've kind of established why you're so keen to continue studying the subject at a high level. It may be that your subject choice has actually been directly influenced by what you've done in school. Either way, you now need to establish, this is going into paragraph 2, just so we know, your passion for the subject. So you chose certain GCSE and A-levels for a reason. So this is your chance to tell us why and how those subjects have really developed your knowledge and passion for your chosen subject. Okay. Right, don't list all your A-levels. That's done elsewhere. Okay. There's a very specific part of your application that does this already. We want you to go into details. So which of your A-level subjects are directly relevant to your chosen course? It's not enough for us to know that you just study biology. I want to know why biology. So what area of biology is so fascinating to you? Okay, you might want to work in stem cell research. If that's the case, what did you learn about in class that made you want to do that? History, maybe that's another option. Perhaps you love the idea of medieval studies. So if that's the case, what did you learn in your history class that made you lean more towards that area of history rather than, say, the World Wars? You could be interested in earth sciences, so the same principle applies, but a really good way of researching how your interests are relevant to your chosen course is quite simple. Just go online to one of your chosen universities and take a look at the course modules. So course modules, they're the topics you'll be learning about during your chosen degree scheme. So let's take a look at the environmental earth science course here at Aberystwyth. Here we can see a small selection of modules available in your first year. Then let's have a look at the first module itself, which is an introduction to earth materials. This module, I'm not going to read the whole thing out, but if you have a quick look, this module basically covers areas such as the rock cycle. But the point I'm making is that researching subject content within your chosen degree scheme will help you not only have a better understanding of how to refer directly to your own subjects, but also what admission tutors are looking for, which is, above all, a genuine passion for the subject and an intellectual engagement with the subject on a deeper level. So other things to think about is how you can demonstrate the skills, you know, in order to show the admission tutors that you have what it takes, and looking at your A-level subjects, maybe your GCSEs too, if that's helpful. But this is a really good idea to maybe just list some of your subjects and write down some of your relevant skills that that you've actually developed while learning this subject. Try to think about things like time management, research projects, evaluating evidence, balancing an argument, all that sort of thing. But don't just list the skills. Tell us what you enjoyed most about doing them, what exactly you did that adequately demonstrated these skills, because at the end of the day, that's what admission tutors are looking for. Because you're going to be applying these skills every day while you're at university. You don't have to use all of this stuff in your personal statement, okay? But again, we're trying to brainstorm. We're trying to think of what to include and what not to. So this is just a really good exercise for you, really, to list all of those subjects. Think about what you've done. And then you can decide then, at the end of the day, right, what am I going to include and what aren't I going to include? How are we doing for time? We're on past. Okay, we're going to have a very, very quick go at this. All right. So let me just get my timer up. I basically want you to just have a quick brainstorm yourself. Just choose one subject and I'm going to give you 1.5 minutes. A few comments about that.
So Amy is saying geography, evaluation, real life applications, statistics and math skills, research methods.
Okay, all right. I'd love to hear more, but I think it's probably best I move on, okay, because we are going to be pressed for time potentially. So then, we've spoken about how to demonstrate the subject knowledge you develop during your academic studies, but admission tutors, they always want to see how you engage with your chosen subject beyond the confines of the classroom environment. So now we're kind of moving on to your paragraph 3 here, okay? What you learned in the classroom, it should have inspired you enough to become a springboard for further research. So if you've not been inspired to push yourself a little further, then admission tutors might wonder if you're genuinely interested in studying your chosen degree scheme at all, especially as it is just so easy with subjects, you know, with subject engagement nowadays outside of the classroom. There's so much available for free, and that's online or in libraries. Of course, the type of degree you choose will mean that some of the following are more useful for some subject areas than others, but here's a few suggestions for you to look at. So you might want to look at wider reading, newspapers, blogs, email newsletters rather. Basically, there's lots to choose from. Are you interested in accountancy? So perhaps reading the Financial Times is an option. Publishing, you've got the Bookseller, which is available online as well. Child psychology, that could be an option. So Piaget's theory on cognitive development. I can say this because I did this education at uni, at Aber, by the way. That's a key research to topic to research. I'm getting my words mixed up here. Anyway, the point is there are plenty of textbooks for you to look at on any sort of subject area. So if you're not doing it at school, try to look at stuff outside of it, you know, just find the stuff. It's there. There's so much there. Look at further studies. So you've got online courses. Some are free, some aren't. So obviously it depends on what you've got available to you. But let's say you want to do computer science. Have you taught yourself C++? Have you created your own games, designed your own website? How about if you want to study body languages? Have you been learning another subject outside of school? There's also further media, okay? BBC iPlayer, they've got, you know, some brilliant content. So you've got YouTube and Netflix as well, if that's an option. If you've chosen a more artsy course, then potentially you could have visited a museum or a gallery or gone to the theatre. Do you love photography? Are you using Instagram? Have you got a Flickr account? All that sort of stuff. And basically tell us, how have you engaged with these things? What have you enjoyed about it? How has this helped develop your knowledge and passion for the subject? Tell us, don't just list stuff, go into detail as far as your word count limit allows. There's other things you can do as well. So have you attended any subject-specific programs such as taster days, mentoring programs, subject conferences, summer school? A lot of colleges and universities do offer these for free. Check ones that are local to you. Are you able to get involved with any of them? And again, remember to demonstrate what you've learnt. Don't just list the stuff. And don't forget to tell us about any subject relevant work experience you have. Tell us details about the skills you developed during that placement. It isn't the end of the world if you haven't got this, but relevant work experience is going to give you that extra edge. I do understand that in this current climate, some of this might be quite difficult to do. The stuff available at the moment, though, it's actually virtual, it's online. I mean, you're here with me today via a webinar. So actually, you've probably got a little bit more options available to you. So just have a look what is being offered for free via webinars at universities. There's going to be a lot. So, many students are hesitant to talk about extracurricular activities, the regular day-to-day stuff, because students often think that admission tutors, they're just not interested in the stuff that's not subject relevant. That isn't true. We want to see the personality behind this personal statement, behind the subject knowledge. It's not all about work, university. You become extremely independent and self-aware as a student, and you're going to have so many opportunities to have fun by joining society, sports teams, clubs. We want to feel confident that we're placing students in an environment that they're going to feel comfortable. So tell us about your hobbies and interests, any achievements that you have that you're proud of, charity, volunteer work. There's loads to include if you think about it. If you've done an EPQ, or anything that's similar like that, and the topic was relevant to your chosen subject, this could probably be included in the previous paragraph rather than this one. By telling us these things, you're showing us that you're a fully rounded person. But if you can demonstrate your soft life skills you've acquired, that would be even better. So another way to say it is transferable skills. Basically, we want you to think about anywhere that you can demonstrate these. So commitment, long-term dedication, time management, balancing your workload, teamwork, creativity, problem solving, using your initiative, all of these things, okay? Like I said, I know this is a lot of information to take in, and you don't have to include everything, but again, the purpose of this session today is to get you to think about these things, to brainstorm, to write down as much as you can. You don't have to include all of it. I was going to ask you to complete a little kind of skills listing, but I don't think we've got time, and I do want to kind of move on because I want us to be chatting with Rebecca, Ellen and David, okay? So I'm going to quickly skim over this bit, okay? And just talk about the conclusion very, very briefly. So, like the introduction, a lot of students struggle with it, but I think it's the easiest part to write. It doesn't have to be very long either, 1 or 2 lines will do. The conclusion basically just needs to summarise to the admissions tutor why you'd be a good candidate, okay? We can break it down rather nicely into 2 lines by stating that your demonstrated passion and your knowledge for the subject means you're a perfect candidate to do the perfect choice for the course, and basically it's to help also say this is going to help me develop my passion for being a computer scientist or something when I'm older. If you've got a career in mind, now would be the time to actually say it, okay? As I said, the bulk of your personal statement's going to be essentially paragraphs 2 and 3. So don't get too het up on the conclusion, okay? Just a nice couple of lines that's going to tie it up into a neat little bow. Okay. At the end of the day, when you've read your personal statement, try to be as honest with yourself as possible. Would you give yourself a place on a course based on what you've written in your personal statement? Right. I am going to now hand over to David, okay? I want us to have a bit of a chat with Ellen and Rebecca. So these are 2 of our student ambassadors. They've obviously gone through this process themselves, but they're doing 2 very different courses. So it would be a really great insight to have a chat with them. Dav, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I got to apologise, but due to connection issues, here in the darkest mid Wales, Susan, I'm appearing on microphone only, so you won't be able to see me.
But we can hear you, Dav. That's all that counts.
You can definitely hear me, so that's the important thing. There were a couple of questions raised in the chat. Just to address those quickly, Susan. Keaton asked about work experience. Should that be in your personal statement if it was relevant to your course? And my answer to that would be definitely yes. But as you noted in the talk, that due to the current climate as it is, it's difficult. If you can't make work experience, I think universities realise this and appreciate that the times are difficult for people trying to get work experience. Then Maisie asked a question about what if your subject has no relevance to your degree choice. I think one of the most important things is that you recognise the skills that you develop as part of your development, the skills you've learned as you're learning your subject, and that you should realise and mention those skills and how relevant are they to your degree course. And lastly, I think Amy asked about a taster session and would a geography webinar be a taster session? And I think most definitely yes. Again, due to the current climate, as you noted, a lot of things are being presented online, and that's the access that people get nowadays to different courses. And if you can mention that you've watched a webinar on a variety of courses, then definitely that's a taster session for me, definitely. But enough about me answering questions. I'm going to throw some questions at our resident guests, Ellen and Rebecca. And you talked, Susan, about creating drafts and not relying on your first draft for, and thinking that's it, that's all finished. Can I ask Ellen and Rebecca, how many drafts did you actually write on the way to completing that perfect personal statement?
For me, I think it was draft number 5 I was happiest with, and that was my final draft. I would definitely recommend saving the drafts though as you go along, because you might start writing your drafts from scratch and then think, oh, actually there's a bit from draft number 2 that I'd like to include in draft number 4, and so on. So just keep an open mind when you're writing it, and also enjoy the process of writing your personal statement, because it's an opportunity to look back on your achievements, within school, and also the extracurricular activities you've taken part in as well.
Brilliant. Thank you, Ellen. And Rebecca, how many drafts did you write?
Initially, when I was writing my personal statement, I probably wrote about 7 or 8 drafts. The biggest problem for me was just cutting it down so I was actually within the word limit. So I did various editions where I'd cut different bits out and just show different people to initially decide which draft I was actually going to send off.
I think that's an important thing, is that sometimes when you're writing your first draft, you've got too many words, you've got too much to write about yourself, and it's better to be in that situation, cutting down rather than filling in as well. And so it's good to be in that position. You mentioned showing your personal statement to other people. So who did you show it to, and did you listen to them? That's because I know my daughter's just graduated this year, and she did I think 7 in the end. I'm not sure if she listened to anything I said, to be honest. But did you show it to other people, and what did you do with that advice then? Rebecca?
So I showed initially to my parents, just before I actually showed any teachers or anything. I wanted to make sure I didn't have any really stupid spelling mistakes or grammar errors. And then I showed it to my head of year, who was someone that had seen hundreds and hundreds of personal statements and people applying for the same course as me as well. And I did really listen to what she had to say, and I made changes based on what she had to say. And for me, mostly it was what to include, what not to include, and just writing things so it read more easily, if that makes sense. Just little grammar errors and those sorts of things.
I think that's an important point, isn't it? That it reads well, and people, your admissions tutor will read perhaps hundreds of different applications, and if you begin every sentence with I have, then people are going to get pretty by the end of that, aren't they? It's quite long-winded then. And what about you, Ellen?
Very similar to Rebecca, really. Showed it to my parents first, just to make sure that I'd included everything. Like Rebecca said, definitely came up against the word count being an issue. So if you are, just conscious when you are writing it that you're not writing a novel, it is something quite short and sweet, if you like. And then I did ask my head of sixth form then, and also the head of department of the course that I wanted to study in Aberystwyth, so the head of department at my school. And between them both then, that gave me a really good sort of overview and stepping stone to build on what I'd originally written myself.
Brilliant. Susan noted talked about an eureka moment. Personally, my eureka moment, I had a brilliant Welsh teacher in Llanhari in South Wales. I had an amazing teacher, and he inspired us. I think 9 of the class of 15 went to study Welsh in Aberystwyth because of him. He was amazing. So that was my eureka moment. What about you two, Ellen?
Well, similarly to you, I had a fantastic teacher, and there was actually only 4 of us doing Welsh at A level, and 3 of us have gone on to Aber to study Welsh. But the real eureka moment for me was visiting Patagonia in Argentina, where there's a Welsh colony there, and seeing people on the other side of the world speaking, you know, my language, and thinking, yeah, that this is what I want to do. I came back from that 2-week trip absolutely buzzing and inspired, and knew that that was definitely what I wanted to do.
And Rebecca, did you have an eureka moment?
I don't know if it was necessarily a eureka moment, but I think doing work experience definitely helped me decide that this is the field I want to go into. So I think the first lot of work experience I did when I was in year 9, I went to a vet practice for a week.
Okay.
And for me, that made me realise that I was really interested in veterinary and veterinary science.
And you're studying veterinary biosciences in Aberystwyth now, is it?
Yes, I am, yeah.
Brilliant. Susan, did you have an eureka moment?
No, I'm not mute. So as I said, I went to Aber. I decided to do a joint honours for English literature and education. English literature simply because I was always passionate about writing. And I know I've already said about the passionate thing. You do have to be very careful with that phrase, but I was, and the actual text that made me go, yes, this is what I want to really get myself engaged with, it's with Shakespeare's Othello.
Right.
I also went on to do an MA in creative writing, which was one of the options I was thinking of doing anyway before I chose to go to university, because I wanted to be a novelist, and I've actually written one now. But that aside, I was also wanting to work in the education system. I originally thought about being a secondary school teacher, so that's why I married both English literature and education together. I didn't go that way in the end, but I am still working, as you can tell, but in the education sector, so it all worked out perfectly for me. I was very, very happy with that. But yeah, I think the eureka moment was, I really love Shakespeare's Othello. I would love to be teaching that sort of thing when I'm older.
And that's a good, you know, you're talking from experience. So we talk about that writing a lot of drafts, getting to know, chopping and changing that personal statement until you get that. And someone is, I think in the, people use the word unique, and each one of us is unique, aren't we? And so what do you learn about yourselves in that process of writing your personal statement? Ellen?
For me, it was a really good way to sort of look at the skills that I had learned and developed throughout my time in secondary school, you know, and also the things that I'd done outside of the classroom, and then to be able to create a list of the activities and achievements that I had accomplished, if you like, and then marrying those skills that I developed with that. And as Susan mentioned earlier, you know, with that word count being quite limited, the more sort of that you can combine and interlink, the better, because that means that you can get as much as is physically possible down in the word count.
Okay. Thank you. And Rebecca, what do you learn in that process, in that writing process? What do you learn about yourself?
For me, I think I learned about the motivations I had for wanting to study the subject I chose at university, and what my ambitions were for studying the course, what I wanted to achieve, and what specifically the interests I had in the subject. It allowed me to reflect on the work experience, the further reading I had done, and what I was really interested in the subject.
Yeah, it sort of condenses that interest and that application in that subject as well. It makes you realise that passion that you have. There's an interesting question on the chat here. Erin has asked, can you discuss 2 eureka moments in the personal statement if you apply for 2 courses with joint honours? Good question. Susan, what would you say?
I would say yes. Yeah. But I'd also consider as well which one's going to be your lead subject, because sometimes you can choose more modules in one subject that you can in the other. I mean, for me, mine was English literature and education, as I've already said. Now, my main focus was always going to be English literature, because that was what I was going to think about doing as a teacher. So that's why I chose the education aspect of it. I don't see why you can't add the 2 in there. But again, just be very wary about your word count.
Yeah, just be wary about how many words you are using in that part. You talked about the skills that you've acquired outside, those transferable skills, those soft skills as well. Rebecca and Ellen, how, talking about things like leadership and teamwork and dedication and perseverance, for example, what were the transferable skills that you had or you've got, and how have those developed as you've been in university then?
The main thing for me was probably the combination of being able to work in a team effectively, but also to be able to work, as effectively as an individual, because when you do go to university, that's probably one of the biggest differences and changes from being in a classroom, is that a lot of it is individual work, and you are very much sort of in charge of your own destiny, if you like, with that, because the more work you put in, the more you're going to get out from it. And as I'm in my to the end of my second year now, and as I look back from when I began my studies in Aberystwyth, I've definitely developed my team building skills, and also learning, that of course it's important to give your opinion, but it's equally as important to listen to others and to be able to act on their thoughts as well as your own.
Yeah, thank you. And talking about, I think it's about motivation as well, working individually and working as a team. It's about how you apply yourself then, and that probably came through in your personal statement. Rebecca, what sort of transferable skills have you developed and carried on developing then as part of your university course?
Well, I think, as Ellen said, teamwork is definitely a big skill that I've developed whilst at university, both in the academic side and extracurricular activities as well. But additionally to that, I think organisational skills, as well as having the initiative to do things on your own and complete your own tasks and go out of your way to gain extra experience, or if you don't know something, then approach lecturers and just have the initiative to reach out and get the most of the experiences you can.
Thank you. I don't have any more questions, but I think it's important that if you feel free to post your own questions on the chat as well, and we'll try to answer it as Susan and Rob have said at the start. But thank you, Ellen, and thank you, Rebecca, for your input there.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, ladies. I wish I'd actually had this opportunity when I was, in year 11, 12, 13, to have this sort of insight. I don't really remember writing much of my personal statement when my time came. I think I just managed to kind of bear down and just get on with it. But I know I struggled with it simply because I didn't have the guidance I could really have done with. So thank you so much for giving us that insight as well. I'm going to share my screen just one more time. I'm not going to be very long now. We are nearly done. And then we're going to open the floor to questions, okay? So let's try again. Okay, right then. So that is pretty much it, as I said. I hope you can see that writing a personal statement, it doesn't have to be entirely scary, but just remember to keep these top tips in mind and you will sail through. So they're on the screen. The main things you have to think about are to be positive and to keep things personal to you, really. We've already gone over this, but don't start every sentence with "I have," because it gets boring very fast. Avoid those dangerous cliches from saying from an early age and putting in overdone celebrity quotes, because we've heard it all before. Try not to write too casually or too formally either. Try and balance it in between. I know that's a bit of a kind of a vague thing to say, but if you were to write too casually, as if you were going to just be chatting, I actually had to look at one personal statement a couple of years ago on one of my visits to a school, and there was a bit of wording like, oh, I really liked it in it, and I was mortified. I was like, you can't put that in there. So don't talk as you would chat. I'm not saying you'd say in it, but my point is, don't do that. But also at the same time, don't be too formal either. You know, this isn't a non-fiction book. You're not trying to spout out the dictionary. Just try and be natural as far as you can. Always be honest. Okay, admission tutors, they can tell if you're lying. All right, they might not be able to tell straight away, but it tends to come bite you later on, especially as well during an interview. They could have taken something from your personal statement, questioned you about it, and unless you really are a phenomenal liar, there's usually a tell. So please don't lie. It's really not worth it. Try to finish your statement on a positive note. Okay, make us yearn for more, make us want to pick you. As we've already gone as well, write more than one draft. Okay, please, you are not going to get this done in the first, second, or even third, fourth maybe if you're good, but make more than one draft. And as well, as Anna said, make copies, because there's going to be something potentially you've written in draft 1 that you get rid of in draft 3, but then you think, you know what, at draft 6 you thought something really, really amazing that you put in your first draft, and oh no, you don't have it. So make sure you make copies of every single draft that you do. All right, take your time, be patient, don't rush it. Again, we are not going to be able to do this in the space of one afternoon. It's why actually you are going to be, starting now. It's why we're doing these webinars now, really. Because the average student, they'll go through about 8 drafts of a personal statement before sending it off. And the earlier you start with it, the better. Okay. As I said, a personal statement is often the defining decision from a university. It's the difference between a yes and a no. So really, don't rush it. It's not worth the pain and the heartache of just not getting where you want to be going. And then finally, really, do not refer to a specific university. The UCAS application system, it has an invisibility clause essentially. So one university is not going to know if you apply to another. But if you've got a maximum of 5 spaces, 5 courses to choose from on your UCAS application, but then you say, oh, I really want to go to such and such because, well, that's it, you've scuppered it for the other 4, really. They're not going to want to take on a student who clearly doesn't want to be there. So do not refer to a specific university, please. Yeah, that is basically it. So I know that was a lot of information. I could have covered a lot more, but alas, we cannot. So I hope you have found this session useful and you do feel a lot more confident in writing your personal statement. We are going to now open the floor to questions, but just before we do, I want you to just have a look at this next slide here. Basically, if you do want general help with your UCAS application, UCAS have a brilliant comprehensive guide. Rob, if you're able to kind of put these links into the chat, that'd be fantastic. So we've got the comprehensive guide to applying, that's via university, but Aberystwyth have an extremely informative hub about applying to university as well. We've got all sorts. We've got a variation of this session there online. We've got a why university, how to choose a course, all that sort of stuff. So amazing resources that were really, really hard to put together for you guys. So please do have a look at that. Next week we do have another webinar. It's presented by our colleagues Robin Lovett and Laura Hill. The webinar will be all about making the most of being at university, and Rob is about to put the sign up link in there for you as well. And then we also have another webinar running later this week from our politics department. It's as part of our international politics series, and it's actually going to be covering COVID. So obviously very, very relevant right now. So please do check that out as well. Okay, I'm going to shut this screen now, and yeah, we are going to open the floor for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. That's fantastic, and thanks to the team at Aber as well. So we do have some questions. Well, I think David has covered a few, but Erin is asking, can you refer to a specific UD if you're only applying to one university multiple times? Or what would you say to Erin?
I personally would say if it is just the one, and it definitely is just the one, fine, yes, by all means do. Would you agree, Dav?
Agreed, yeah, definitely. So if you are just making one application, as I said, you're making 5 applications to one university, then yeah, I would say it's okay then to use that university's name then.
Great, thank you. Maybe we just check. I know a few of you are on the mic, but maybe I'll just check in with Charlotte. Charlotte, how have you found this session? Have you found it useful? And is there a question that you might like to ask the team at Aber?
Yeah, I found it useful. I think I've got more of a clearer way of where I'm going to go with my personal statement from now. The only question I had was that, like, with the work experience, I'm looking at forensics, which is obviously a lot of lab work, and obviously it's hard enough to get lab work experience without the current climate, but it's pretty much impossible. So, would you recommend anything with that?
So I just quickly cut in here. I could be completely wrong. Charlotte, were you on the UK Uni chats the other day?
I don't think no.
Oh no, it's only because I had the exact same question in that. So no. Right. Okay. My answer to that would be obviously I know the current climate is an absolute nightmare at the moment for getting any kind of really comprehensive work experience. Again, the only thing I can suggest at this point is look at as many webinars as you can. I know there are some universities as well. I mean, Aberystwyth, unfortunately, we don't offer forensic science, but I know some of the universities do, and they will have available on their websites things such as the forensic science topic webinars, but they'll also have things such as a kind of a little tour going around as well. I think Derby, actually, I think Derby have one, so it might be
Derby's my second option.
Okay, so on their website, and I know this because, as I said, I helped a lady out the other day on one of our HE fairs. I linked her to that simply because I thought, oh, this is actually a really interesting tour of the department, and it kind of had a few cool little things going on in there as well. Yeah, it is really difficult when it's a very specific area that you need to try and get work experience for. But again, just look for as many online resources as you possibly can. Look at taster days, look at webinars, and also as well, maybe just look at some further reading. Are there any documentaries that you can search out? I know there's some kind of really interesting stuff that you could kind of get really, not CSI, but the kind of real life version of CSIs. And Netflix have a few of those. So yeah. But obviously, universities, they're going to understand that it's going to be quite difficult to get the relevant work experience that you need, which is why you need to try and make it up in other sort of areas by doing your research as best as you can.
All right, thank you.
No worries.
If I could just cut in on that, something that I've been doing recently is quite a few online courses. Some of the universities offer free online courses and MOOCs and things. There might be something relevant for you there, just to it's a bit further reading, get a bit more knowledge of the subject as well, and shows more interest.
All right, thank you.
Great, thank you for adding that as well, Rebecca, and thank you, Charlotte, for the question. We're just following up on Erin's question about making several applications to the same university. That's sort of triggered a few questions. I think Keaton is just asking, wouldn't it be better to apply for more than one university in case you don't get the first choice? And then Emily has followed up saying it was mentioned a few moments ago that you could make multiple applications to a single university. Would you recommend this, and what is your opinion on this? So those two kind of combine. So Susan, what would you say to that?
Oh, if I can just start there, myself, I only applied to Aberystwyth because I knew that was the only place I wanted to go. I'd visited on an open day, absolutely loved it, got the vibe, and knew that that was the place for me. So if you are 100% confident and you know that that is exactly what you want to do and exactly where you want to go, obviously that is absolutely fantastic and good for you. But also, if you are applying to more sort of competitive courses and, you know, institutions, then sometimes it is better just to fill up those 5 options with different courses and unis, just to be 100% sure.
Yeah.
But Susan will have a far, far better response, I'm sure, than that.
To be perfectly honest, I think you pretty much nailed it. Dav, could you weigh in there at all?
Everyone's unique, everyone's different, and everyone has different choices, reasons for going to university, and you know, if your choices, and as Ellen said, if your choices, you're sold on one place and you're interested in a variety of subjects or joint honours in that university, then there's nothing wrong with making applications just to one university. But then on the other hand, you know, if you want to spread your choice, then have a look around, do your research, find out which universities offer these different courses. So some will be making 5 choices to 5 different universities, and some perhaps will be hedging their bets or something on 1 or 2 universities then. So it's all up to you in the end, isn't it? It's an individual choice, an individual taste in the end. So but there's, yeah. Is that okay? Does that answer the question? But does that question the answer?
I think it does.
Thank you so much to the team, and thank you to everyone who's contributed today. We will bring the session to a close now, but Susan, is there anything final you'd like to say, just as final remarks?
Thank you. That's all I can say. Thanks.
Great stuff. Thank you.